What's Goosebumps like as an adult? Pretty fun, actually. I'm having a great time reading these children's books. Thanks for asking. In previous videos, I've gone back and read the first 7 Goosebumps stories, and in this video, we'll be looking at 2 more. The Girl Who Cried Monster, and Welcome to Camp Nightmare. If you want to watch all the Goosebumps videos in order, there'll be a playlist in the description. Do people still use playlists? I hope so. So join me, won't you? For today, we delve deep into Mr. Stine's Monster Madness. The Girl Who Cried Monster. The 8th book in the series was released in May 1993. The release date is actually kind of interesting because the last book, Night of the Living Dummy, was also released in May 1993. Up to that point, the books had been releasing every other month, but for some reason with this one, we got 2 in 1 month. Honestly, it kind of shows, but we'll get into that later. Let's get into the cover art. It's unique, I guess. This perfectly ordinary adult human man is about to eat a fly. Don't know what the girl in the background's so horrified by. This is completely normal behavior. We're in extremely blue-purple territory here on the color scheme, but I think it works. Actually, my favorite part of the entire cover is the solid red backdrop behind the girl in the doorway here. Provides a nice contrast and highlights her state of alarm. Not one of Tim Jacobus' best covers overall, but considering he just did an all-time great for Night of the Living Dummy, I think we'll let it slide. 2 out of 5 Necronomicons for this one. The story centers around 12-year-old Lucy Dark, who loves scaring her 6-year-old brother Randy with monster stories. I know what you're thinking. Lucy Dark? Any relation to Joanna Dark by any chance? No, but seriously, Dark is a real surname. I even checked. I thought the last name was an interesting choice. I mean, all the other protagonist names so far have been really plain. Amanda Benson, Margaret Brewer, Evan Ross, Greg Banks. None of those names sound like secret agent code names or murder mystery authors or, no offense to them, like they're anybody even remotely cool. But Lucy Dark? She sounds mysterious. She sounds aloof. She sounds annoying. Actually, as far as Goosebumps protagonists go, Lucy's pretty cool. She likes monster stories, she rollerblades, she reviews classic books.
2 thumbs down.
She's a girl after my own heart. Lucy starts off the book by telling her little brother Randy about the Timberland Falls toe biter, a monster that she claims will eat plants and mind its own business. Wait, sorry, I misread that. She claims the toe biter will bite his toes. That makes a lot more sense. Randy, understandably, is upset by this. After Randy runs screaming inside the house, Lucy pulls a back-to-back prank on her friend Aaron by pretending a bird's nest is a tree monster. So you get the idea. Lucy's always pranking her family and friends, lying about there being monsters around every corner. She's the girl who cried monster. And just like the boy who cried wolf, she effed around and now she's gonna find out.
How was I supposed to know there'd be consequences for my actions?
Her mom decides it's time to cut the crap with these monster stories.
Lucy, don't you have reading rangers at the library? Why don't you go and bother Mr. Mortman for a while?
Mr. Mortman is the librarian, and he's in charge of the summer reading program, Reading Rangers. Lucy characterizes Mr. Mortman as kind of a weird guy, but ultimately harmless. Though she does repeatedly note that his hands are very wet. Sopping, even.
When he gave me my book, it was so slimy I almost dropped it.
Damp palms run in my family.
One evening, Lucy has a very relatable epiphany.
Oh, my blades. I forgot them at the library.
She forgot her blades. Don't you hate it when you forget your blades at the library? Lucy returns to the library after close. I really like how they did this part in the TV episode. I've commented before that oftentimes the Goosebumps TV adaptations feel very rushed. But thankfully, The Girl Who Cried Monster is such a simple story in comparison to some of the others that they have time for a full 45-second sequence showing Lucy entering the library. You may remember from the previous video that certain other TV episodes decided to use those 45 seconds very differently. When Lucy enters the library, she notes that something isn't right. She has a bad feeling about this. After she gets her blades back, she starts spying on Mr. Mortman.
It's dinner time, my furry friend.
Alright, so he's feeding his tarantula. Big deal. Well, actually, in the book, it's turtles. And instead of furry friends, he calls them his timid friends. They have no respect for the original source material in this TV adaptation, replacing the turtles with tarantulas, much like the turtles. Mortman feels trapped. As Mortman unscrews the lid for the jar of flies, something happens. Mr. Mortman transforms into a real monster. I remember seeing this episode on TV, and it scarred me to the point where I would close my eyes anytime they aired a rerun. Although, to be fair, it wasn't hard to make me close my eyes as a kid. Here's another piece of children's media that scarred me at the time.
Hambone, where you been? I've been around the world and I'm going again. Hambone.
That's a clip from a children's musical series called We Sing. Grandpa's Magical Toys is the name of the episode. I closed my eyes every single time it zoomed in on that beaver's face. I couldn't take it. So yeah, it didn't take much to make me close my eyes. With that said though, they do an excellent job here of showing Mr. Mortman's transformation. And the music, the sound effects, it all comes together to pay off the building atmosphere from earlier. Payoff for atmosphere? In a Goosebumps episode? Yeah, it was a good 10 seconds of filmmaking, but let's not hand over any Oscars just yet. So, Mortman's a monster. Lucy's gotta tell somebody about this. I sure hope all the fake monster stories from earlier aren't going to make everyone skeptical.
Mom! Dad! A monster!
Shock and awe, Lucy's parents don't believe her.
Don't you say hi anymore?
Hi, Dad! There's a monster at the library!
I've been pretty harsh in previous videos about all the failed humor in Goosebumps episodes, but I mean, it's no Curb Your Enthusiasm, don't get me wrong, but they have at least a little comedic timing in this one.
This is no joke!
Lucy decides that she's going to get proof that Mr. Mortman is a monster. And you'd think this would entail doing something like taking a photo or video of him transforming, but instead Lucy goes back to the library and just watches him transform again. And then she's like, oh, now they'll have to believe me. She spends over 20 pages doing this, by the way. Not getting proof, I mean. I don't understand how Lucy doesn't get that her parents are just gonna continue not believing her. Oh, also, there's this weird scene just before she goes to the library where her friend Aaron is playing with a one-person frisbee. I tried searching this up to see if it was a thing, and as far as I can tell, there's no such thing as a one-person frisbee attached to a rubber band. So basically, Mr. Stine just like made up an entire product just for this one chapter introduction. Like, it was so unnecessary. I find it fascinating. Just have Aaron play with a yo-yo or something. Instead, he's hitting himself in the face with a frisbee. I guess it's kind of funny. Anyway, so Lucy tries to tell her mom again that Mr. Mortman is a monster, and she really means it this time. Surprise, surprise, Lucy's mom doesn't believe her again. Can't believe Lucy's mom would say something like that. I mean, did you even look at the proof Lucy brought to you? Which is, let me just see here. Trust me, bro. Yeah, that's what it says. The evidence is just trust me, bro. Yeah, I can't believe that didn't work. Honestly, the book's version of events stretch out Lucy's investigation hijinks for forever. Lucy goes back and forth between her house and the library, and it starts getting very repetitive. Here's an example. Mr. Mortman has a catchphrase for whenever he's about to transform and chow down. Dinner time, my timid friends. He says it over and over. Dinner time. And we have to read it every time Lucy goes back to the library to spy on him too. You know, I'm starting to think they aren't your friends, Mr. Mortman. It's like, you know, your psychological torture phrase is wasted on them, right? They can't even understand you. Sometimes he even repeats himself in the same scene. Dinner time, my timid friends. Yeah, man, we heard you the first time. In the book, Lucy basically just ends up repeatedly watching Mr. Mortman transform over and over again. And then saying, aha, now I'm sure he's a monster. On page 108, for example, Lucy's still hatching these harebrained schemes like balancing on a wheelbarrow to spy on Mr. Mortman through a kitchen window at his house. And if you're wondering, well, how is she gonna get proof he's a monster from that? Well, her friend Erin's with her and she's trying to show Mortman to him. But he's the one holding the wheelbarrow. Lucy even forgets that he's there. If it sounds like I'm being a book hater right now, then you're picking up on all the right cues. For the first time in this series so far, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I prefer the TV adaptation. The actor for Mr. Mortman in the TV show just sells it really well. One minute he's the mild-mannered librarian.
Why don't you go pick another book?
The next he's saying something seemingly harmless, but with a sinister undertone.
Perhaps we all have a little monster in us, Lucy.
And before you know it, you're watching him eat crickets. Most of the villains in the TV adaptations are played really over the top and cheesy, and while Mortman certainly has those moments, he also has the quieter moments that build up the tension.
Wouldn't it be cool if they were real monsters?
Well, I'm not so sure, Aaron. Most people like to be frightened in movies or stories. Not in real life.
The actor for Mr. Mortman, Eugene Lipinski, unfortunately hasn't had any major roles that you may know him from, but I give him a lot of respect for how he went all out for this role. It really enhanced the episode. So yeah, TV Mortman, 2 thumbs up. That's the Lucy review for you. Back to the TV show timeline, and if you're confused where we are, that's understandable. I'll catch you up. Just forget all that stuff about the wheelbarrow and the timid friends and all that. Lucy's only seen Mortman transform 1 time so far. She ran home, told her parents, and now is on the phone with her friend Aaron, who also doesn't believe her.
Well, you'll believe me soon enough. I'll prove it to you.
Only took TV version Lucy 1 encounter to get the idea to take a picture. That's fantastic. Book version Lucy could take a few notes. Lucy goes back to the library for the 2nd time, and this time she's ready.
It's dinner time, my furry friends.
Lucy readies her camera. She takes the shot.
Who's there?
Yeah, that's right. The flash goes off. This happens in the book version too. It occurs much later in the story, of course. Mortman immediately realizes that it's Lucy.
Lucy!
And a chase through the library ensues.
When you got a library card!
Keep running, little one. I love fast food.
Okay, so corny joke aside, I will say that lore-wise, this is a startling discovery. Up until now, Mortman's been eating fistfuls of flies, with the occasional tarantula or turtle. And now he's saying, hey, it's been great subsisting on these subhuman life forms all this time, but now I think I'll eat an entire 90-pound kid. Kind of a big leap, don't you think? Shouldn't you have like a squirrel first or something? Work your way up? It's also interesting because in the book, he never says this line. In fact, in the book, he never says or implies that he wants to eat Lucy. He says,
Hey, is someone there? Who's there? You won't get away.
In the book, Mr. Mortman never says he wants to eat Lucy. And in this respect, I actually prefer the book's version of Mortman, because Mr. Stine keeps it ambiguous. Book Mortman, even in his monster form, almost comes across as misunderstood, like he's a victim in all this. Which is one reason why it's so funny that TV Mortman, in contrast, is so merciless, and full of one-liners to boot.
Dinner is served.
Lucy escapes Mortman by crawling under his legs. Then she runs out the door, where it's suddenly light out, and goes home to safety. They have an explanation for how she got away, but it's said so fast that you'll probably miss it.
How'd you get away?
I think the flash blinded him.
The flash blinded him. Those must be some really sensitive eyes. That's when Aaron drops a bombshell.
You forgetting something, Lucy.
Your library card has your address on it.
Mortman knows where you live.
All right, Aaron, try not to sound giddy with excitement at the thought of your friend being devoured.
He could be on his way to your house this minute.
Aaron, seriously? Knock it off.
That's not funny, Aaron.
But unfortunately, he's right.
Good evening, Lucy. May I come in for a minute?
Mr. Mortman does show up at her house. And what's worse, her parents aren't even home. Although Lucy tries to pretend otherwise.
Mom, is Dad still cleaning his rifle?
Mortman claims he's only there to return her backpack that she left at the library and asks if he could come inside.
Could you maybe just leave it on the doorstep? Please?
Wouldn't it be easier if you open the door and let me hand it to you?
Mortman finally gives in and leaves, presumably to go back to eating small defenseless animals somewhere.
I look forward to our next little chat.
This is a great scene, and I was surprised when I was watching it that I remembered it from seeing the episode so long ago. It's that kind of stranger danger scene that Mr. Stine likes to do every now and then, like in Curse of the Mummy's Tomb, when the kids are in Ahmed's car. It's really well done. With that said, I have one little nitpick with the TV's version, and it goes back to the library scene that just happened, where Mortman calls her Lucy.
Lucy!
Mortman clearly knows that it's Lucy he was chasing in the library, and Lucy knows that he's a monster, so there's some mystery missing from this scene compared to the book version. Mortman never identifies Lucy as the one who's spying on him in the book, so when he shows up at her house, Lucy's wondering if he knows or not. And that mystery is a source of tension that's missing from the TV version, where he's made it clear he knows it's her. I still think the TV scene is executed really well. I just wish it had the tension of the does he know or doesn't he know that the book version had.
But see, they don't know that we know that they know.
Lucy gets her photos developed and has another run-in with Mortman, who her parents invite over for dinner.
Mr. Mortman, why don't you come over for dinner tomorrow night?
And to Lucy's horror, he accepts.
It's been so long since I've had a home-cooked meal.
The table is set for the climactic dinner scene. Mortman's about to come to the Dark family home for dinner, but will he bite off more than he can chew? Sorry, I just really wanted to say that line. Before we get into the dinner scene, there's a couple parts of the book that I did want to mention. I said in the last video that this is a favorite phrase of Mr. Stine's and that I'd point it out anytime he used it again, so here it is. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. We got another one! When Mortman corners Lucy in the library, instead of crawling through his legs to escape, Lucy accidentally topples over a card catalog, and Mortman prioritizes his librarian duties over capturing her and starts cleaning the cards up. I remembered the one thing that librarians hate most: having cards from the card catalog spilled on the floor. Lucy eurekas as she runs away safely. This was the funniest part of the book, possibly the entire Goosebumps series so far. I have a pet theory that Mr. Stine just kind of made it up on the spot because he wasn't sure how else Lucy was going to escape from the library, but it's arguably funnier if it was planned. Like Mr. Stine plotted it out from the very beginning. It was going to happen this way. Everything was leading up to this. The librarian urge to clean up spilled cards. Amazing. If you're wondering about the photo that got developed, well, mysteriously, Mortman isn't in it, so Lucy didn't actually get proof. This happens really late in the story. In fact, in the TV version, it happens just before dinner.
The fact that he's not in this picture proves it.
Lucy, do you know what proof is? Because I'm starting to think that you're a bit shaky on the concept. First you thought, trust me, I saw him do it twice, was proof. And now you think that a photograph he's not even in is proof. Is your name Lucy Dark because the light bulb over your head is burnt out? Dinner time, my timid friends. This video is sponsored by Factor. Factor's meals are created by a team of gourmet chefs and delivered fresh straight to your door, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code WOLF50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code WOLF50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. Summer's coming up quick, and a great way to beat the heat is by staying inside, a state of being that I am in almost exclusively. With Factor, you get a variety of meal options, such as Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto, so you can meet your wellness goals in time for summer without ever leaving the house. As far as your indoor time goes, time in the kitchen is cut to a minimum. Factor meals are ready to eat in just 2 minutes, so you can get back to, random example here, sitting at your desk making YouTube videos. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code WOLF50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders. That's code WOLF50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month of orders. Big thanks to Factor for sponsoring this video. Now it's Goosebumps time, my timid friends. That doesn't work as well. Doesn't roll off the tongue. Oh well, I'll leave it in. The time is finally here. Mortman's come over for dinner, and the Dark family's rolling out the red carpet.
What's for dinner?
Or should I say, the red napkins.
Since you asked, you are.
Yep. Lucy's parents are monsters too, and they devour Mr. Mortman on the spot. Lucy and Randy are horrified by the sight. How could this be? Mom and Dad are monsters?
You can never, ever let anyone know that we are monsters.
We know that.
Oh, so Lucy knew already. She knew that her parents are monsters. And so that explains why she was so scared of Mr. Mortman. Wait, what?
And when you two get bigger, you're gonna get your training fangs.
Oh, okay, so Lucy and Randy are also monsters. But then why was Randy so scared about the toe biter earlier? And why were the parents in disbelief that Mortman was a monster? As Lucy's mom exposits here, the reason why Mortman being a monster was so frightening is because they can't allow any other monsters in town, because then the townspeople would get scared and chase them out. It's a bad twist and a bad ending, but we'll talk more about it in a minute. Finally, the TV version has an exclusive outro where Aaron shows up to their house trying to scare them with a monster mask.
Talk about timing. Well, what's for dessert?
You know, you got some nerve, kid, poking your head through the window and then being like, so what did you make me for dinner? And before all that, you were like, Lucy, you know that librarian knows where you live and is gonna come kill you while your parents aren't home, right? Aaron sucks, dude. Mr. and Mrs. Dark, please eat him.
You like cherry pie?
Sure.
All right, let's review this thing. For me, The Girl Who Cried Monster as a book is a victim of time crunch. Like I said earlier, it came out the same month as Night of the Living Dummy, and before that, these books came out every other month. And I think for both these books, there are rampant symptoms of rushed work. Both of these stories have a big feature in common: stalling. I examined this in more detail in the last video, but Night of the Living Dummy's story doesn't actually start until 80 pages into the book. And everything before that is just to fill time. The Girl Who Cried Monster has a lot of stalling too. There's a full 20 pages where Lucy plots to get proof, but then just watches Mortman transform again. She watches him transform over and over, with no story progress and no character development offered. This is a 40-page story that was stretched out to 137 pages. It's one reason why the 22-minute TV adaptation works just as well, if not better. And then there's that ending. If you don't think that's evidence of rushed work, I don't know what to tell you. From this point on, Goosebumps books came out monthly, so they never put 2 books out in 1 month again, as far as I'm aware. But I have to say, I think Mr. Stine worked best when he was only writing 1 every 2 months, like he was for the first 6 books. The early Goosebumps books are generally considered to be the strongest material in the series, and I know I'm not very far in yet, but I can already see the cracks showing, and I think the scheduling is to blame. Anyway, let's start rating. For Spine Shivers, which measures how scary the story is, I'll give the book a 3 out of 5, and the episode a 4 out of 5. I think the episode has a superior portrayal of Mr. Mortman overall, and it's rare to get a Goosebumps episode with a villain that isn't just over-the-top campy. Just like with Let's Get Invisible, when I drew a parallel between their repeated use of the mirror with that of a teenage drug den, frankly, I also found The Girl Who Cried Monster to have a disturbing parallel. The premise of an adult preying upon a child entrusted in their care is an all too real danger in the non-fictional world. I couldn't help but view this story as being a molestation allegory. From Lucy's horror at discovering the strange but mild-mannered librarian transforms into a monster behind closed doors, to the helplessness she feels when her parents don't believe her. I don't think Mr. Stine intended these parallels, but for me, what was otherwise a pretty silly monster story was made much more disturbing. It's the kind of thing that makes me glad I'm doing this Revisiting Goosebumps series, because you really do have a different perspective on these stories as an adult. Now, for Funny Bones, which measures how funny a story is, I'm going to give both versions a 3. There are funny moments, like when Mortman lets Lucy go so he can tend to his librarian duties of cleaning up a spilled card catalog. That was a classic. The TV episode has the fast food line, and just generally has a good sense of humor.
Mom, is Dad still cleaning his rifle?
It's not rip-roaring hilarious or anything, but it's funny enough. Finally, Closet Skeletons, which measures the twist ending. And yeah, I'm giving both of these a 1 out of 5. Sorry, but it just doesn't make any sense. The fact that both Lucy and Randy know they're monsters the entire story, but still act the way they do, is completely ridiculous. I wish Mr. Stine had made Lucy act illogically fearless during the story. It would have been refreshing for a Goosebumps protagonist to act cocky and invincible for a change, and it would have made sense considering she's a monster too. Instead, we got an ending that I think was rushed out as a way to just wrap up the story. Additionally, I came away from the ending feeling like Mr. Mortman was possibly an innocent victim in all this, at least in the book version. I mean, think about it, he's just a librarian. He's heading up reading rangers, where for all we can tell, he harmlessly spends time encouraging children to read books. And Book Mortman never says he's going to eat Lucy, and we're not given anything to suggest that he's ever hurt another human being. He eats turtles, yeah, but he's a monster. Maybe he's eating turtles to keep his human flesh craving at bay, which would be a pretty noble strategy. Then Lucy's parents just eat him alive? Why? Because he exists? He was just minding his own business for the most part. The real villains of this story are the Darks, including Lucy.
Are we the baddies?
Overall, I'm giving this book a C grade. It's not as bad as the first Living Dummy book, but it's too plodding and repetitive to be graded any higher. In contrast, I'm giving the TV episode a B grade. This is the first time I've given the TV adaptation a higher grade than the original book version, but I just think it's much better paced. And with that, it's time for the grand debut of something to help us keep track of all these grades. I'm calling it the Grizzly Graph. Like I said before, I'm not going to guarantee that I'm making a video for every single book, but if I do, this is going to look sick by the end of it. So, here we are, in the awkward space between story reviews. We just got done talking about The Girl Who Cried Monster, and now we're going to move on to the next story in the series. I just hope I can figure out a clever way to make the transition. Welcome to Camp Nightmare is the 9th book in the series, published in July 1993, 2 months removed from May 1993's double book release. It's 136 pages long. That wasn't an unusual length at the time, but after this, Goosebumps books get significantly shorter. When Mr. Stine was writing just one book every other month, they ended up being pretty lengthy. Every book from number 4 to number 9 was over 130 pages long, for example. But from number 10 onward, when he started writing them on a monthly basis, the average length went down by about 10 to 15 pages. Anyway, let's take a look at the cover. Right away, I'm gonna tell you, this is a banger. There's some scary monster off to the side, creeping their little claw hand into a primitive camping tent. Most importantly, the monster's hidden enough by the dark that we can't see any physical details outside of the eyes and the hand. It's a great visual, really sets the atmosphere for the book. For whatever reason, the color scheme for this is incredibly similar to the last book, The Girl Who Cried Monster. We're once again in blue-purple territory. Personally, I think they could have gone with something that fit the cover image better. The purple is fine as a primary color, but I think something like a nice green would have made a better secondary color. I don't know. It's not my job to make book covers, you know. Overall, I'd give the Welcome to Camp Nightmare cover 4 out of 5 Necronomicons. Not bad. One other thing that's noteworthy about Camp Nightmare is that it's the first in the fan favorite Camp series. Summer camp is a popular setting for Mr. Stine's stories, and although none of these camp stories are related in any way, it still kind of feels like they are. People like to debate about which of these was the best. From my memory, first reading them as a kid, I feel like the horror at Camp Jelly Jam was my favorite, but I'll be interested to see if that holds up revisiting them as an adult. It'll be a long time until we get to Jelly Jam though. If ever. Now you may be wondering if there's a TV adaptation of Camp Nightmare. Well, good news, there is. And for the first time since Stay Out of the Basement, It's a double episode. Hopefully, since they got a full 44 minutes for this one, the TV episode will be good. Please be good. Please. Our story begins on a bus full of kids headed to summer camp. Goosebumps stories tend to go in one of two categories. The solo hero, like Lucy in the last story, or the ensemble cast, like in this one. Camp Nightmare stars Billy, and unlike most Goosebumps protagonists, he's a level-headed and mature leader. On the bus to camp, he meets Mike, who he describes as shy and nervous. Mike is the whiny one of the group, but honestly, he has good reasons to whine. Next is Colin, who's described as a tough guy with a bandana and sunglasses. So yeah, they nailed that one in the TV adaptation. Look at him, all aloof, leaning on the side of the bus. Just after Colin, we have Jay, who Billy describes as a big, loud kid who loves sports and pranking the other guys. He's a real joker. The TV version of Jay has a completely different personality, but we'll get to that in a minute. At one point during the bus ride, the boys comment on seeing, quote, prairie cats out the window, which I've never heard of. I assumed this was a different name for prairie dogs, but when I Googled it, I came up with nothing. Anyway, it's all fun and games until the bus comes to an unexpected stop. So the bus driver just starts unloading all the kids' luggage in the middle of the woods. He won't tell them anything, he won't answer any of their question, he just takes out all their stuff and leaves them there. This is probably the ultimate fantasy of many bus drivers out there, but to these kids, it's horrifying. Mike and Billy are the only ones in the book asking the driver questions, and Mike starts whining that they aren't being answered, of course. In the TV show, though, all the kids are upset.
Where are we? What are you doing? This isn't Camp Night Moon. It's the middle of nowhere.
Wow, Jay sounds pretty upset in this scene. He's whining almost as hard as Mike. Would you like to know what Jay is doing in this scene in the book? Well, when they first get out of the bus, he's observed being in a shoving match with another boy, and then he's seen throwing rocks at stuff. So yeah, it's a little weird that in the TV version of things, he's like, "What are you doing, sir? This isn't Camp Night Moon. You're being so irresponsible right now." Usually, if the cast is a little bigger, the TV version will choose to cut one of the characters. Like, for example, in Say Cheese and Die, they cut Michael from the TV adaptation. In Let's Get Invisible, they cut April. Neither of which were big losses, but in Camp Nightmare, they decided to add a character, Roger.
Hey, Camp Nowhere. We're here.
Now, Roger is in the book version, but he's not introduced until page 59, where he's horsing around with Jay and joking about Billy purpling his pants. Now, would you believe this is one of just 2 lines of dialogue Roger has in the entire book? But for some reason in the TV version, he's a little chatterbox.
My parents go out of town a lot.
What do they do? Rob banks?
I see. The parents go out of town to rob banks, so they won't be recognized by the locals. Good one, Roger. So yeah, while the TV episodes usually whittled down the ensembles from 4 to 3, in this one, they actually expanded the roster to 5. It's confusing too, because Roger in the TV episode is basically just the jokester half of Jay's personality from the book. And I guess Jay's kind of a wet blanket in the TV version of things, because otherwise he'd be too similar to Roger. But then I would ask, why even have Roger? I'm not sure why they did this, but yeah, I'm not sure why they did this.
What was that?
After the bus driver abandons them, the campers notice they're not alone. In the book, there's a very interesting sequence here where the campers are harassed by a pack of skinny, furry animals, complete with 2 rows of teeth. One of the kids asks if they're prairie wolves, which is another term I hadn't heard of. Apparently, a prairie wolf is another name for a coyote, but the book description isn't anything like a coyote. In fact, it's not like any animal I've ever heard of. It's too bad this part got cut from the TV show. It's actually pretty intense. The creatures get really close to the kids. They're snapping at them, frothing at the mouth. It's all very exciting. In the show, though, there's just one of them. It's funny, when I was reading this part, I was wondering to myself, like, how is the TV adaptation gonna portray this? How are they gonna show a horde of creatures like this? Well, the answer was that they don't. So, mystery solved. Before the campers are attacked, the monster is scared off.
Latest technology.
Hi, I'm Uncle Al.
The latest technology is a gun. Prairie cats, prairie wolves, technology guns. We're off to a rollicking start. You may be wondering just what the hell that thing was.
What was it?
That was Saber.
Who's Saber?
Just keep to the trails and it won't bother you.
It's kind of funny he says that because just before this, the kids are all standing literally on the main road, and they were clearly being bothered. But sure, I bet this Saber thing really respects Uncle Al's camp rules. On the way to Camp Night Moon, Billy hits it off with one of the girls.
My name's Dawn.
I'm Billy.
But then immediately has to say goodbye, since the girls' and boys' camps are separated.
Your camp is a half a mile down this path.
Ah, what a shame. Young love not given the time to blossom. And that's because Uncle Al does not want these boys distracted.
Girls are not part of this program.
Nice voice crack, Al. Very masculine.
Girls!
On their way to camp, they pass by the forbidden bunk.
The forbidden bunk.
Why is it called the forbidden bunk?
Because it's forbidden. So stay clear. Any other questions?
Ooh, me, pick me. Okay, so you know that kid who played Greg Banks in Say Cheese and Die?
Oh, yeah, the blonde kid.
Right. He is blonde. So the actor's name is Ryan Gosling, and he's actually been in a lot of movies since that episode.
Why wasn't I told about this?
Well, it was on a need-to-know basis, Al. I'm sure you understand. Anyway, he just had the most successful movie of his entire career. Yes, true. It is worth celebrating. But yeah, the movie was actually Barbie. Have you seen Barbie, Uncle Al? Barbie? He played Ken?
That's not allowed here.
Not allowed? He's a professional actor. He can star in whatever movie he wants.
Girls are not part of this program.
Okay, forget I said anything, Andrew Tate. Let's get back to the story. The guys finally arrive at their cabin and get settled in. In the TV episode, there's this weird part where shy, nervous Mike just starts trying to bully Billy out of nowhere.
Hey, look! Cookies from Mom.
Actually, from Daddy. Help yourself.
Thanks.
Interesting dialogue choices aside, would you like to know what this scene is like for Mike in the book? Well, Jay playfully slaps him on the back, apparently sends Mike flying into a dresser, and then he whines, "Hey, that hurt!" So it's very funny to me that he goes from this to asking Billy if he got cookies from Mommy in the TV version. Well, as it turns out, there were some snakes hiding in Mike's sheets. That's right, Mike gets bit bad.
What's the matter, Mike? Not enough chips in your cookies?
Oh my God, shut up, Roger. Billy takes the lead and wraps the snakes up in the sheets, then throws them back out into the woods. Mike starts whining about his snake bite, and that's when we get introduced to the guy's camp counselor, Larry.
The name's Larry?
It's an amazing directorial choice to have Larry do the loser L sign as he enters the room. And if you weren't around in the mid-90s and you're wondering if that was a mistake, as someone who was around in the mid-90s, let me just confirm that this was universal for loser. And boy, is Camp Counselor Larry a loser. Larry's not concerned at all with Mike's snake bite.
Oh man, get that out of my face, I just ate.
And when asked about the camp nurse, he balks.
What nurse?
There's no nurse?
No. What do you think, Uncle Al runs a camp for wimps?
He says it a little different in the book, mentioning that Uncle Al doesn't believe in coddling the campers. Perhaps you're starting to notice a theme, one that will be solidified by Camp Night Moon's campfire theme song.
Night moon, our hearts are full of pride. Night moon, oh, will be our guide. Cobblers and whiners, they are not welcome here. Night moon's for big guys, there is no place for fear.
The next day at the cabin, Billy notices that Mike is gone. Not only has Mike disappeared, but all his things are gone too. Like he was never there. No, really, Larry starts acting like Mike never even existed.
Where's Mike?
Go back to your table. This one's for counselors only.
Can we just take a moment to appreciate how good actor Paul Brogren was in this role? His portrayal of loser Larry is like if Napoleon Dynamite became a villain. It's infuriating how aloof Larry is in these circumstances, but what's almost equally infuriating is the fact that you could most likely kick his ass. You'd probably be wailing on him and he'd be like, Oh, I'm gonna tell Uncle Al about this. The campers start up a game of Scratchball, which Billy describes as being pretty much identical to baseball. Not really sure what the difference is, if any. Anyway, Larry proves to be just the worst once again and beans Colin in the back of the head on purpose. Billy watches the whole incident unfold and details how Larry's expression changes right as he's throwing the ball at Colin. It really drives home the fact that these kids are not safe around the adults here. You may remember from a previous video that in Say Cheese and Die, there was also a scene where the character Bird gets beamed in the head with a baseball. I'm not sure what Mr. Stine feels is so compelling about seeing a kid get hit in the head with a baseball, but I'm left wondering how many times we'll see it happen in this series. Twice in 9 books is a pretty breakneck pace. No pun intended. From this point on, things start going really off the rails. Jay and Roger decide to sneak out to visit the forbidden bunk.
Come on, Billy. Let's break some rules. The forbidden bunk awaits you.
Billy decides to stay with the concussed Colin like a good friend, though, so Jay and Roger set out on their own, but only one of them makes it back. According to Jay, the monster Saber tore Roger to pieces. Phew. Wonder what Saber did with those pieces.
He probably ate them. Ate them.
The TV episode has this whole sequence where Jay and Billy are carrying Colin back to the cabin in a sleeping bag so they can hide from Saber. And for some reason, I have a very vivid memory of seeing this part in particular as a kid. It's not in the book though. Actually, in the book, Billy and Colin carry Jay into the cabin. I guess because he's feeling faint from all the excitement or something. I definitely think the TV version of events made more sense. Ooh, look at this. Saber skulking the woods. Watch out, it's not safe out there. Billy keeps watch over Colin and Jay all night, then heads out to finally get some answers. They confront Larry at breakfast about Roger's disappearance.
Where's Uncle Al?
Take a breath, Billy.
But Larry insists that not only was no one attacked at the forbidden bunk, but there's no one at Camp Night Moon named Roger. Billy wanders off alone to clear his head when he runs into a familiar face, Dawn, the girl from the beginning. Dawn and her friend Dory, who's not in the TV version, both regale Billy with all the strange things happening at the girls' camp. The girls, just like the boys, are disappearing. She says they've even started calling it Camp Nightmare instead of Camp Night Moon. She said it! She said the title! She said Camp Nightmare! In the TV version, this encounter takes place at the Forbidden Bunk for some reason. I'm not really sure why they did this, not to spoil anything, but Billy actually never goes into the Forbidden Bunk in the book. In the episode, though, he just finds Dawn hiding out in there. Well, actually, he does find one other thing. You see, Uncle Al establishes early on that he wants the campers to write letters to their parents every day.
You write home to your parents every day. Every day!
Throughout the story, Billy and the other kids can be seen writing these letters, but they start noticing their parents aren't writing them back. And that's when Billy finds it. The letters. Every single one that he and his friends have been writing. They were never sent. Hey, counselors, what gives? You were supposed to obey those instructions to the letter. Huh? To the letter! Oh my God, I'm Roger. Billy begins to panic. His friends are disappearing, and Larry and Uncle Al not only aren't doing anything about it, now he finds out they're preventing him from contacting his parents. The next day, Jay and Colin never come back from their hike, and suddenly, Billy is all alone. They do a good job in the TV version showing Billy slowly losing touch with reality with all these revelations. It's clear that he's losing trust not only with everyone at camp, but with his own perception.
Hello? Uncle Al? Larry!
And while the TV episode paces this part very well, in the book, Mr. Stine makes Billy go on this wild canoe trip with Larry instead, and he introduces 2 other campers, Tommy and Chris. It goes on for like 12 pages, but the gist of it is that Larry falls in the river and Billy has to save him. Look, here's an artistic rendition of the scene from a Goosebumps trading card. Eesh, she's even face down. Check it out, kids, it really looks like he drowned. He's fine though, trust me, everything's okay. When Billy gets back into the fold of camp life, he finds that things have gotten pretty weird.
What is wrong with you boys? I said hustle!
Yep, that's Uncle Al. In camo gear, things are about to get serious.
We have a runaway reported from the girls' camp. Search everywhere, aim carefully. We do not want her getting away.
In the book, Uncle Al is handing out full-blown rifles to the boys during this sequence. They changed them to these dinky little crossbows in the show, probably a good move considering what happens next. And just in case you're confused about what's happening, I'll let Uncle Al clear it up for you.
Are you saying we're supposed to shoot her?
That's what I said, Billy.
Now, I'd say this scene is a little shocking today, but just for context, this is, of course, several years before the Columbine massacre, so teenage kids with deadly weapons in children's media was a much more cartoonish idea at the time. With that said, though, Uncle Al does clarify that the weapons have tranquilizer darts. See, Billy, everything's fine. Perfectly normal tranquilizer rifles. But Billy's not having it.
Or do you have a problem with that, Billy? Do you have a problem?
I won't do it.
And finally, all the unsolved mystery of the past few days bubbles to the surface.
What about Mike Snakebite? The saber-eating Roger? Jay and Colin drowning?
Mike, Jay, Colin. We have no campers by those names.
Billy has had it.
Put it down, Billy. Now! Ah! Congratulations, Billy. He passed! Billy passed!
Way to go, Billy.
Billy watches in shock as everyone emerges from the woods. Dawn, Mike, Roger, Jay, Colin. Not only are they all alive and unharmed, but they were in on it. Billy's parents even come traipsing out of the woods, tears of pride welling up in their treacherous eyes.
Mom! Dad, what are you guys doing here? I think I'm going crazy.
No, you're not, sweetheart. I knew you'd pass.
I think this is the first time so far in the Goosebumps series where the main character is psychologically tortured. There's always been some mystery in these stories, like Dad's secret plant basement, or the bizarre green goo, or the hidden mirror in the attic, but the protagonist's sense of reality has never been questioned like this before. Actually, I think Welcome to Camp Nightmare was my first brush with psychological horror. I remember this scene where Billy's aiming the crossbow at Uncle Al and thinking to myself as a kid what an unfathomable situation this would be like to be in, and that I wouldn't have known how to react. I guess I wouldn't have passed. And on that subject, what did Billy pass exactly? Well, Uncle Al reveals that this isn't a summer camp. It's a government testing lab, where they set up this Truman Show-esque environment to see if Billy was qualified and ready to join his scientist parents on a dangerous expedition. He had to demonstrate that he knew when to follow orders and when not to follow them. He had to show that he was brave and could stand up for what was right. So where is this dangerous expedition to?
Where are we going?
Very far away. A place called Earth.
Research tells us the aliens there are pretty dangerous and unpredictable.
Billy quips that Earth could never be as dangerous as Camp Night Moon, and his mom quietly comments, "We'll see," and the story ends. So yeah, they were on a different planet the whole time? Suddenly, all the weird inconsistencies make sense. Prairie cats? It's because they're on a different planet. Scratchball? It's their alien version of baseball. This pack of mysterious creatures that attacked in the book? Well, they didn't fit the description of any animal on Earth because they weren't an animal on Earth. Looking back, there's a lot of hints that they're in a different place. Like this whole conversation Dawn has with Dory, where they name drop 3 clearly fictional locations. Still, it's interesting that they all look, talk, and act exactly like humans. But then again, I guess that's why they're able to go on an Earth expedition, right? Because they wouldn't be able to blend in otherwise. Anyway, that's Welcome to Camp Nightmare. Pretty unique for a Goosebumps story, although in more general horror media, it's not an uncommon twist or concept. Like a lot of Goosebumps stories, there's a similar Twilight Zone episode. In the episode Third from the Sun, a scientist escapes on a spaceship from an impending nuclear war. At the end of the episode, they reveal where they're going on the spaceship.
It's called Earth. That's where we're going. To a place called Earth.
Whoa, they were on a different planet the whole time. While this is a similar twist to Camp Nightmares, I think there's actually a piece of horror media that is very similar to Camp Nightmare the whole way through. And it's one of the most misunderstood and unfairly vilified horror movies out there. I'm talking about M. Night Shyamalan's The Village. The Village came out in 2004, 11 years after Camp Nightmare. I can't prove that it was influenced by Camp Nightmare, but there's a lot of similarities. Just a quick warning, spoilers for The Village incoming. With that said, I'll only be spoiling one twist in the movie out of several twists, so if you still want to watch it after, it won't be entirely ruined. The Village is about a rural community that leads simple, agriculturally based lives. But their seemingly safe community is under threat from horrific monsters in the woods, known as those we do not speak of. And coming on the heels of M. Night Shyamalan's alien thriller Signs, this film was unfortunately marketed as a creature feature. The villagers live in fear of these creatures in the woods, and the audience comes to live in fear of them too. Just like how Camp Nightmare's creature Saber keeps the campers in line, the villages those we do not speak of keep the villagers from entering the woods or leaving the community. The creatures terrorize the village for most of the film, until finally it's revealed due to an extenuating circumstance that the creatures from the woods are fake.
Those we don't speak of! Not be frightened. It is only farce.
This is the moment that enraged film audiences everywhere. For over an hour, these creatures were terrorizing these poor people, and once they were revealed to be costumes for the village elders as a means of control, well, suddenly the main draw of the movie was gone. I'll admit, as someone who saw this film in theaters in July 2004, I was initially among those who hated the twist. In fact, on the first viewing, I couldn't get past it. It kept going for like an additional half hour after the reveal, and all I could think about during that time was how much I didn't care. Because the monsters weren't real. In the TV version of Camp Nightmare, Saber shows up for one last scare, only for the reveal that it's actually just an animatronic. Saber being fake is a relief to these characters. In contrast, those we do not speak of being fake traumatizes the character who finds out in the village. Billy gets gaslit for a weekend, but the people in the village are gaslit for their entire lives. It took me several viewings to understand the notorious twist in the village. The first time I saw it, I mistakenly thought that the monsters being fake was the twist. But actually, the twist in the village is irony. The reason the village elders artificially create the creatures in the woods is to preserve their village's innocence. Throughout the film, they talk about the towns that exist beyond the woods, and how the towns are full of violent people who murder and steal, and they want to protect their peaceful village from those influences. This all comes to a head when main character Ivy has to brave those woods to get medicine from the towns. Medicine they need because one of the villagers violently attacks one of the others. As the background of the village's founding is revealed, you realize that in the elders' efforts to preserve its innocence, the same violence they sought to escape in the towns has followed them into their peaceful community. And that's the true horror of the film for me, because as it turns out, the monsters aren't fake after all. Those we do not speak of were never the film's monsters. It's the humans of the village. Just like in nonfiction, people are the scariest creatures of our world. I could honestly talk about The Village for an entire video, and maybe I will in the future. I think it remains one of the most underrated and profoundly misunderstood horror films of the last 20 years. But maybe I'll save those thoughts for another time. Let's get back to talking about children's books. You may wonder if Camp Nightmare has a similar point to make. Well, it's mostly just a silly twist, but as an adult, I still found an interesting theme. Camp Nightmare really hammers home that it's a place for big boys.
Girls are not part of this program.
What do you think? Uncle Al runs a camp for wimps?
Cobblers and whiners, they are not welcome here. Night moon's for big guys, there is no place for fear.
It even ends with Uncle Al ordering the boys to hunt down and tranquilize the girls.
Aim carefully. We do not want her getting away.
Throughout the story, the boys are told by men in authority to suppress their emotions, toughen up, and follow orders. Considering this is all in preparation to send Billy to Earth, the indirect commentary seems to be that he's gonna have to fit into a chauvinistic culture, and that he's gonna have to stand up against it. Now, you may think I'm reading too much into this, but I mean, look at how they're dressed here. The alpha male parallels are about as subtle as a brick to the face. Now, as usual, I don't think Mr. Stine intended these parallels. I think he just wrote what he thought kids might find scary. But, you know, what's the point of being an adult if I can't overanalyze children's media, right? Let's review this thing and get out of here. For spine shivers, I'm giving this book a 3, and the TV episode a 4. The TV version focused a lot more on Saber, who helped give an edge to a lot of the sequences. In the book, Saber never actually appears, and the only time it does anything is supposedly killing Roger at the Forbidden Bunk. Meanwhile, in the episode, Saber shows up everywhere. Of course, the real horror here is mostly psychological, and both versions of the story do a good job of showing how Billy is losing trust with his perception of reality. For funny bones, I'll once again give the book a 3 and the episode a 4. The banter among all the kids is pretty entertaining, but Larry steals the show, particularly in the TV version. He's just so hateable. Finally, for closet skeletons, yeah, I'm gonna give these a 2. The twist that it was all an experiment full of actors was okay, I guess, but the additional twist that they were on another planet the whole time, I mean, did it really add anything? Everything could have been exactly the same, and if they left off the fact that they weren't on Earth, it would still be a fine twist. It just felt kind of tacked on, especially in the episode. In the book, you at least had all these mentions of prairie cats and the pack of weird fanged creatures, but in the episode, there's really no indication at all that they're not on Earth. They don't even call it Scratchball, they call it baseball.
Who's for a serious game of baseball?
Overall, and I feel so boring doing this, but I'm giving both the book and episode a B. They're pretty good, but they're not home runs. The twist went a little too far for me, but I still had a nice time with this one. Camp Nightmare, more like Camp No More, because the video is about to be over. So next video, we'll be checking these bad boys out. The Ghost Next Door and The Haunted Mask. These were pretty good stories from what I remember, but we'll see how they hold up. On the next, Revisiting Goosebumps. You excited or what?
Yeah, maybe.